Hello and welcome to the Buyouts, Business, and Bourbon podcast. My name is Gerry Spitzer. I'm the host. Ashley, before we kind of get started with more serious stuff, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience with bourbon and what is your drink of choice if it's not bourbon, because it's okay if it's not.
So I do enjoy a bourbon, but particularly I would say an old fashioned. And not to sidetrack the discussion about bourbon, but I actually prefer a rye whiskey in my old fashioned. So all the bourbons are delicious, a little too sweet for me though.
I usually order mine a little light on simple, and the lady looks at me, the waitress will look at me like, okay, sure. But I agree.
I have rye. It's delicious.
Yeah, I will do that. Other drinks of choice for yourself. Anything else you like?
Gerry, I don't really drink.
We know you like a good cocktail. Is it wine? Is there a type of wine you like?
I like a traditional cosmopolitan. It's my drink of choice.
Great. Okay, good to hear. So I know you went to school at Penn State, graduated Penn State. You could give us a little bit about your journey, and I know you were a commercial banker for many years. Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey to make it to commercial banking and then into the kind of exit planning and ESOP space where you currently are? Tell us a little bit about your path on how you got there.
Yeah, sure. So I went to Penn State as an undecided major because that's how much I knew about what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I went through a series of different careers, a little bit of audit, some time on Wall Street, ended up in commercial banking out of business school, looking to find ways to engage with business owners and, add value. And I was in the commercial banking space running teams and, looking for opportunities to help middle market businesses for about 20 years. I think what led me to sort of the succession place and EPI and ESOPs is having those broader discussions about, what owners' hopes and dreams really are and their personal and financial goals. And that to me was more powerful than some of the more specific conversations about banking products and services. And, as much as you like to think that all of the commercial banks are very different and unique, a lot of the products and services are the same. So I think the dialogue, the larger conversation about life, hopes, and dreams and, the future was more interesting to me from that perspective.
That sounds great. Just before we get into your commercial banking career, I want to take a step back and want to just give me a little bit about yourself and your current firm and kind of where you are. Yeah.
Yeah, so I had the pleasure of working with Lazear Capital when I was in my role as a commercial banking professional, where I ran teams and led the ESOP groups for financing ESOP transactions. So was able to work with them. And, that was an amazing experience for me, but also for my clients. As some people know, I would say ESOPs are sort of like the best kept secret. And in commercial banking, most of the times, when owners are looking to transition, they'll look for opportunities for third-party sales. And in my role, I was able to identify opportunities for them to consider another option, which again, were ESOPs. And, Lazear is not the only firm that provides ESOP advisory, but in my experience from commercial banking, they were the best in class.
That's great. When you're in commercial banking, I know knowing you all these years that you're a little frustrated with kind of getting deals done and getting approvals from the bank and deals that you work on for a long time. All of a sudden they submit all their financials. They wouldn't get. So I know that's a frustrating experience, but I know you were in commercial banking a long time. What are kind of the good things and bad things of your experience in that commercial banking world? Yeah,
I think a lot of different things. So, in managing teams, it's difficult when, banks go through their cycles, they're in a specific industry, then they're out of an industry. They want to lend money, then they only want deposits. So, it can be frustrating at times. And again, I think when you're too focused on the credit facilities themselves, you're not adding value. And in commercial banking, I think it's important that, people are really, some of the RMs are digging a little deeper and trying to come up with innovative solutions, and not to harp on ESOPs too much, but it's a discussion piece that is definitely a tool for certain commercial banks that they're able to really provides some excellent advice and an innovative solution that some of the banking products and services just aren't doing.
It's probably also a little bit more interesting, right, in coming up with these creative solutions from the ESOP perspective, where you're going in like we do, talk to business owners, profiling them, really understanding what they might be looking for. And it's a much more complicated case than kind of approving a line of credit for a big manufacturing company, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, every business is unique and every owner is different. They have different goals. And what's great about, an ESOP is it can be completely customized and tailored to fit everyone's personal and financial goals. So yes, I think this is a unique focus that, it definitely requires a lot of expertise from the internal and external professionals involved in the transactions. But the value is unprecedented.
Yeah. Was it a big decision to make the move from being in commercial banking all these years? And I know you've only been with Lazear about a year or so, so you're still relatively new in the kind of ESOP investment banking space. But I imagine it was a big decision to make that move, and I'm assuming you're glad you did.
Yeah, I've always worked for very large institutions with a considerable amount of bureaucracy. And yes, this was quite a risk working for a very small boutique investment bank, but I've never worked with better professionals, and it's like a family.
That's great to hear. What kind of intrigued you about the ESOP space to really go kind of full force into ESOPs only? Because it's a much different space than kind of broad-based commercial banking.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like I said before, it's sort of a best kept secret. A lot of times my clients would be exploring third party sales, and, a lot of time private equity was at the table, and seemingly that would be the best offer. But it's actually not usually the case. In my experience, if you do a comparison, you'll most of the time see a larger benefit, in after tax dollars from an ESOP transaction with full market value. And I just don't think that information is made widely available. And there's just a lot of bad advice out in the market, unfortunately. So, the fact that you can customize this plan, you have a built-in buyer. There's, like I said, unprecedented tax advantages, and the ability to get that full value and remain in control is something I think every business owner should consider. There's drawbacks to everything, but I've seen a lot of drawbacks to private equity in my years. Very unhappy owners, dissatisfied with the outcome, and, their employees are a lot of times not taken care of either.
Yeah. I mean, as you know, we work together in the exit planning space quite a bit. And I think when people ask me all the time, why are there only 7,000 ESOPs in the country? My response, and I really believe that business owners that are exploring an exit will go to their attorney or go to their CPA looking for a referral to a middle market M&A banker. And 95% of the M&A bankers in the country do strategic sales and private equity only. So the business owner that gets introduced to that middle market banker, they may like him or her, but at the end of the day, they're only seeing two of the exit options, and They end up doing one of those two. Whereas ESOP investment banking tends to be kind of a separate animal. So if they don't know about ESOPs or don't get introduced to that ESOP banker, they never even know this option exists. So how do you think is the best way for ESOPs to kind of get a little bit more well-known in the marketplace so that business owners really can explore this? Because as you know, not every business should do an ESOP, but most of them should at least consider the pros and cons of that option, because we know that option sometimes looks too good to be true for the right owner, because you could sell your business tax-free. Your employees become the owners. They're incredibly satisfied. The owner keeps control of the business. And I do get a lot of comments saying it sounds too good to be true.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people aren't exploring the ESOP structure because there's just so much misinformation in the market. What I hear a lot of the times is that the employees couldn't possibly come up with enough money for the transaction and what the business is valued. And, that's not how ESOPs work, for one. There's many other out there. But I think it's just, having an open mind and realizing that, this is one of the biggest decisions of the life of an owner. And so it would be prudent to explore all of your options. And to your point, an ESOP is certainly not right for every single business and owner, but you would be doing yourself and your employees a disservice not to at least explore what that would look like for your business. And shameless plug for Lazear, we do the feasibility analysis so I spend 80% of my time educating owners, advisors, anyone interested in ESOPs on how it might look, the pros and cons. And, we're willing to roll up our sleeves, get in the weeds, and figure out if this is right, at really no charge. And, we have the best professionals on our team. So we have CPAs, CFAs, tax attorneys, all of the folks that you would need to really do a deep dive and make sure that these owners understand what it would look like.
Yep. And I didn't give too much of an intro on myself, but my name is Gerry Spitzer. I'm president of the Exit Planning Institute. Ashley sits on our board. So we started this group in New Jersey, in your board or my board, basically a couple of years ago to really educate business owners and advisors in the greater New Jersey area on exit planning and ESOPs in particular. And that's really what our overriding goal is. Ashley, we're not the only ones that really believe in ESOPs. It's a whole community, as you know. And the state of New Jersey, we also both are on the board for the Rutgers School of Employee Ownership, and we're on their advisory board. But Ashley, I know you have some interesting news, and it's already been out in the marketplace, so we're not exactly spoiling anything. But why don't you tell us a little bit about New Jersey made a commitment a year or so ago in allocated funds for employee ownership and providing the opportunity for employee ownership to businesses in the state of New Jersey. I know Lazear was chosen as one of the key vendors for that program. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that program? And maybe this podcast can spread the word to other states around the country to mimic what New Jersey's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a wonderful grant. And, we're very excited to be working with the NJEDA and Rutgers in spreading the word to business owners in New Jersey about ESOPs. So this is going to be very helpful in covering costs associated with that education, which is really valuable. And other states really should consider programs similar to this because, as some people know, this is a forced retirement benefit for these employees. So when an owner sells to an ESOP, the employees receive this free retirement benefit. Whereas with other retirement benefits, you would have to contribute funds to receive that benefit. So such as a 401k, and your employer may or may not match it. But if you don't contribute the funds, you'll have no retirement savings at the end of your career. Whereas with an ESOP, those benefits are given to you for free. So it's very important, that businesses understand that. I mean, it's a great benefit for the business owner, but also the employees who are receiving this free benefit, this free forced retirement benefit. So I'm hopeful that we'll have the opportunity to work with a lot of the business owners in New Jersey, and hopefully the word will spread to other states as well.
So if business owners are listening to this, Ashley, which ones would qualify for the program? Is there a way that you can talk about what they go about to do to apply for the grant? Because I know that there's a certain amount of money set aside by the state for these feasibility studies. So not everybody can have this opportunity, but if someone's interested, how does one go about it?
Sure. So at 1 p.m. today, May 28th, we'll be doing a kickoff where everything will be disclosed as to how you would apply, the links, the requirements, but it will all be live today. There's several requirements, but the kickoff is going to be later today.
And then we can probably have some information later to follow up if anybody wants to follow up on websites and things like that. But I think it's a great program, and I think other states in the country probably should follow suit with promoting the employee ownership. And I think it's kudos to Lazear and yourself to be on that short list of folks that are involved in that program. So that's really exciting.
Great.
Hey, Ashley, why don't you tell us a little bit about your firm's kind of recent wins and give us an example of any business owners maybe that you've worked with that have gone through the ESOP transaction and really kind of what was the benefits to them in a transaction like this? And I know we talk about this all the time, is that most of the referrals you get in your space come from existing business owners that have done ESOPs themselves because they're so happy with the end result transaction that many times people in the same space, they're all friendly and they compete, but they really don't compete because they're in their own territories. But they always tell their buddies about doing this ESOP transaction as an end game. So I don't know if you have any colorful examples that you might want to share that your firm has done that may shed the light for listeners on kind of what a transaction might look like. And I could talk about one that we did as well.
Sure, sure. I mean, there's always a common theme. I'll draw from, a few different transactions to sort of tell part of the story. I think the first sort of shocking piece of information is when you understand the value that you receive after tax and what that would look like for the equivalent third party transaction. So, particularly in the state of New Jersey, if you were receiving a 6 times multiple, you would need a 9 or 10 multiple from a third party for it to even be equal. So just, the fact that these, the taxes, the capital gains taxes are pretty significant. And the fact that your business could potentially operate tax-free, I think that's usually shocking to people. In a recent transaction, we were working with a construction company and they received third-party offers at lower multiples than we were able to obtain for the ESOP. So you add in those tax benefits and it's just, really remarkable. So it's nice to see the happy look on people's faces when, for this particular situation, the third party offers didn't even work out. So the potential was to, shut down the business, finish out the jobs, and help the employees find other opportunities. And instead of doing that, the business sold for a very nice valuation and the owner is happy. And now their employees have this free retirement benefit and they're continuing to run and manage the day-to-day operations, until the point where they determine that they're no longer needed really. And they have a very strong management team. So I think, the fact that you can receive this full fair value, and remain in control and provide this amazing benefit to your employees is really an outcome that makes me proud of what I do.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think it'd be interesting to see out of the 7,000 ESOPs, how many of them are really like multi-generation family owned businesses, because I know a good portion probably are, because what happens is it's all about legacy. And it's like, for example, the firm we worked with up in the Massachusetts area went ESOP and there's 100 locations. And I remember talking to the owners in the middle of the transaction. And just out of curiosity, I was like, how did you find out about ESOPs? Going back to my original point that nobody really knows about ESOPs. But he was at a public supermarket at the deli counter on vacation in Florida. And he sees a sign as he's getting roast beef sliced. He sees a sign saying we're 100% employee owned. And he said, just making small talk with the guy behind the counter. He's just saying, look, what does that mean? He goes, well, it means that I have $1 million in my ESOP account. He's like, what does that mean? He goes, well, I get allocated shares every year. He didn't know all the details of the program, but he certainly knew what his balance and his ESOP account were next to his K. So being an employee owner, there was no chance he was ever going to leave Publix and getting an allocation of stock every year. So it builds that retention. And then for companies that can get a better deal from a competitor or private equity, if you know about ESOPs and can weigh the pros and cons, there's definitely very much pros when it comes to legacy, building a succession plan, saving in taxes, that it almost, like you said in the beginning, it's almost too good to be true. But like I said, I think it's our job to kind of promote this as an option so that businesses and owners that are in that stage of their life, which baby boomers are aging, they're getting in that age where they're in their 60s. They really do need to think about making decisions. And as you know, this is intertwined with a lot of things that we do at Questar Capital, is that estate planning, charitable giving, asset management, managing the exit process for clients. All of those things are kind of intertwined. incredibly crucial for a business owner making decisions. That's great. So Ashley, why don't you tell us, what do you think, after a transaction's done, what do you find the business owners usually say to you afterwards? And as far as like how satisfied they are, how satisfied you and Lazear are, kind of what happens after a transaction's all complete?
Well, after it's all complete, they're usually very happy because it is a very involved process that takes several months, and there are a lot of parties involved: attorneys, bankers, lawyers, trustees, valuation folks. So very important to have all the best professionals involved because it does require a tremendous amount of expertise. But ultimately things, some of my clients will say, I'm not going to tell anyone that this was easy, but you guys, held our hands and we got through it and everything happened the way that you said it would. But it was very, it wasn't easy. So I think, happy for it to be over, satisfied with the result, exhausted from the process, to be honest. But yeah, overall, just knowing, they preserve their legacy and culture and, whatever charity and community and their employees, and also, feel that they, again, have received that full fair value. It's really a win-win for everyone. It's a happy result. And we have some proprietary solutions that we use to, add a few bells and whistles to the tax savings. So I think, it's great. It's very satisfying. And, the owners that we work with, knock on wood, are always willing to be references for anyone considering. And they're all brutally honest. So it's always nice. You could hear it. And I always suggest to my prospective clients that they speak to the business owners that we've worked with in the past, because there's no one that will give you a better flavor of what you will experience than someone who has just done it. So I encourage that. And I know everyone else on the Lazear team does as well. You can reach out to any of our clients, ask them questions, and they're all excited to talk about their experience, which is great.
It's great. It's great to hear. Now that's exciting. You're doing great work there. What industries do you see being kind of like the hot industries that are doing the ESOP transactions? And why do you think they're hot, or do you think they'll continue to be hot? Because I have my own opinion, but I kind of want to hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak, that what you think is hot right now.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of activity in the construction space, professional services, manufacturing. To be honest, all industries would qualify for an ESOP. It's more so, what the financial and personal goals are and the construct of that business. But I think the heavy human capital type organizations lend themselves more to a value in the ESOP structure, because, when the people are the assets and they're getting the benefits, I think it transfers to a more productive, efficient organization, which ultimately is the value in these ESOPs, right? There's a reason why ESOP owned companies perform better than their peers, because they can hire, attract, and retain better people for longer. So, I think.
And architecture, engineering firms historically have done a lot of ESOPs. There's no natural buyers there from private equity necessarily. So
it's the human capital, people, the professionals, behind it, behind the scenes.
And then do you find that most of your referrals come from centers of influence in the business middle market space? Lawyers, accountants, business brokers that can't do ESOPs. Where do you see most of your kind of inflow of opportunities for business owners to exit come from?
Well, again, most are from referrals from existing clients. So the industries that they're in, everybody knows someone who is their age and looking for a succession plan or some sort of transition. And the flexibility that an ESOP offers is always something that triggers a thought in some business owner's mind. Like, oh yeah, well, I have a buddy and he would be interested for this and this reason, or this would be great for this person. So that is above and beyond the biggest source of referrals, and makes a lot of sense, right? Because they've just experienced it. So it's top of mind. But, yes, same types of professionals also would be potential referral sources. But I spend about 80% of my time educating the other professionals as to exactly what happens in an ESOP and how it can be structured and the mechanics around it, the pros and cons. So I think, there's more work to be done in educating the community of advisors so that they're providing the best advice to their clients. I wouldn't say that there's a specific area that I'm seeing the most of volume personally.
Gotcha. Okay. That all makes sense. I mean, I think the future ESOPs is bright because I think that the education piece is essential. People like us kind of spreading the word as an option to other methods to exit. Because if you want to give your shares to family members, you can still do a partial ESOP. We're not here to kind of educate you on all the, craziness of the ESOP world because there's an awful lot of ways to skin a cat, right?
Lots of ways. Yep.
Yeah, you could do partial ESOPs and you could do some tax-free. There's S Corp, C Corp. So it gets complicated. So I'd say, when people ask me what are the negatives or the challenges of ESOPs, I'd say one of the biggest challenges is you're putting together a team of advisors to execute on a transaction, which I'd say a firm like Lazear as the investment bank is basically, I think, the quarterback. And I kind of view us at Questar as more like the head coach that brings in the quarterback to get the transaction done. But there's a bunch of players. A quarterback can't win on their own. So there's independent trustees, there's valuation folks, there's CPAs, there's attorneys. So I try to be honest with the business owner that doesn't have the patience to go through a transaction. It's 6 months of a lot of meetings to get done. So I think that you need that motivation, that whether your motivation is not paying taxes or legacy, or you want to take care of your employees, whatever it is, you need enough spirit behind this to go through that process, because it's not as easy as, signing an NDA with a private equity firm, sending out your information. They send back an offer letter. You sign it, and guess what? Some cash hits your account, but you're going to pay capital gains taxes. You lose your control. There's a bunch of things that happen with private equity, and it's just truthfully more of a complicated process because of the professionals involved. But both Ashley and myself, I think that the most important thing is when you work with people like us, we're bringing in the A team to get the transaction done. And we know the folks that can get transactions done and done properly, correctly, and by all the laws. So I think that's really essential.
Couldn't say it better. The white glove service goes a long way. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle and a lot of professionals. So it's important to work with the right ones and work with a team that, does the most ESOPs and has the most experience. It goes a long way. It will definitely make your experience as an owner a lot more seamless.
Exactly. Well, that's great. Well, I wanted to thank you so much, Ashley, for being our guinea pig first guest on the podcast. And this is, I know you like bourbon, so you're going to get your first Woodford Reserve customized bottle of bourbon sent to you.
Woohoo!
So you will enjoy that. But in closing, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I think you guys have done a great job at Lazear. You've done a great job yourself with owners. I've seen you firsthand. So really excited to have you on as a guest. So I thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you, Gerry. It's been a pleasure working with you as well. And I look forward to our continued success.
Great. Have a great day. And thanks again.